So hello, everybody. Welcome on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I think we're Twitter. I think there's. Is it? Are we doing Twitter here or not? I don't know. I don't. Do we have? Yeah, we do. We are on live on Twitter. So yeah. So we're live everywhere. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the presentation. Thanks for being here. Happy Friday to you, wherever you are in this beautiful, beautiful world. Wherever you are, happy Friday to you. It is Friday, and that is a good day. That is a good day. Now, keep in mind, tomorrow in Kentucky, it's going to be really exciting because tomorrow is the Kentucky Derby. So, well, thank you there, Coffee. So, a Kentucky Derby is tomorrow. And, you know, in Kentucky, that's a big thing. That's a big deal. So, you know, we're excited about that. We always, Kentucky always really does, it does, we do it up. We do it. There we go. Turn it up a little bit. So we really have a lot of big time celebrities and all this other stuff come over. So anyway, you know what? I don't even know. I love the Kentucky Derby, but honest to God, and I know sounds cliche, but I've been so busy. I don't even know who the favorite is. I have no idea. I'll try to find out tomorrow. Oh, let me charge this up so it won't die on us. There we go. So I don't know. I don't even know who's running. I don't know who the favorite is. So I feel like a slacker. So I will have to figure that out. Okay, let me just give you a couple things before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. And this is going to be a really interesting conversation tonight. A really interesting conversation. Hopefully you're going to enjoy it. But first of all, I want you to go to this website, KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com, KGRADB.com. Go to that site, but make sure you sign up and put Bishop as your promo code because you're going to get 30% off your subscription. So if you do that, why not? I mean, that's always a good thing. Anytime you can get 30% off, get 30% off. Also, you want to go to my website. That's easy too, bishopjameslong.com. That is my website. And then, of course, if you want to go to, then you can check that out. And if you want to go to the church's website, it's usocc.org. And that is my site. So there you have it. Now, I want to remind everybody that I do teach the online demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. There's 4 classes, basically, and I used to charge $49.99. Basically, it's $12.50 a class. But of course, you know, there were some trolls that had issues with $12.50 a class. But anyway, so we decided we're just going to give it for free, give it away. And so if you want to join, if you want to be a part of it, all you got to do is go to bishopjameslong.com, click on the class link, and you'll find the information. Now, also on the website there is a link. If you would like to donate, we would appreciate the donations to help the clergy for the church. That would be very kind. All the funds will go to our Bishop-elect, Father Abbott. You know, Father Tommy is going to take care of all the funds. So it will not go to even though I have every right to charge whatever I want because it's my work. But what I'm going to do is I'd rather use this work to help fund some of the clergy. Because, you know, the clergy, you know, we don't get paid as clergy. So, you know, we have to help in any way we can. We had about 250 new folks in there. We had about, I think, 250 people have enrolled extra. Now, if those 250 had actually paid the $49.99, that would have come out to $12,497.50. I think we raised about $450. So you can see there's a huge discrepancy there. So if you can donate, please don't donate to me. Please do not go to Bishop James Long and donate. Don't do that. I ask you to make sure you go to the bishopjameslong.com and then click on the class link. Okay, make sure you click on the class link, and that's what you can donate there, because that goes to Father Tommy. So we're just trying to keep everything separate. And so I appreciate you guys doing that. So thank you. Well, tonight, no matter where you are, I know some of you are just really overwhelmed and you're stressed. You're full of just a lot of anxiety because of crazy world. You know, Paranormal Fridays is where we just have a good time. We talk about the paranormal. And sometimes the topics are pretty heavy. Now, I've been doing this for over 2 decades. So obviously, when you do radio and I used to start just on online radio. That's all I did is online radio. And after you do it for 2 decades, you pretty much cover every single topic multiple times within the paranormal. I mean, you just, there's only so many topics you can choose from within the paranormal. I have done this presentation before, and people have asked me to do it again because a lot of people missed it. And this topic certainly, I would say, is not for children, only because of the situation and the location that we're going to be talking about. And tonight we are going to talk about one of the most haunted locations in the world. And this is the Aokigahara Forest in Japan. And this is, folks, I'm telling you, this location, I've known investigators who've gone to that location, and I've spoken to them about it. And boy, they are just, some will never, ever, ever go back again. They just won't, because of the things that they heard and saw. It truly terrified them. And we'll talk a little bit about what they experienced, and I think perhaps what's true and what's not true. And but this forest is pretty intense. Okay, I'll try. I got 14,000 messages, so we'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, before we do this, the Aokigahara Forest is also known as the unaliving forest. So I have to say unalive because if you say a certain word that starts with an S, then you are banned from TikTok. So that's why we have to say unalive. But before we get into this presentation, this is what I think I need to say. Anyone listening to this or watching this and you're thinking of self-harm, you need to reconsider. Don't stay quiet if you're having thoughts, and reach out to someone and genuinely seek help. So I want you to, if you're having these issues, you need to reevaluate the potential of your life and how you could change. I mean, or volunteer at youth or homeless centers. Teach others to not make mistakes you've made. And if you're dealing with depression, talk to someone who could provide a different point of view. So there is a phone number that you can call if you're having those issues and you're having those thoughts, and it's 1-800-273-8255. So I think this is important to let people know that there are answers. 1-800-273-8255. Okay. Thank you there, Judy. And I appreciate that. 1-800-273-8255. There's always a better solution. So let's just please understand that there's always a better solution. And you just, and I talked about in the article that we have for our bulletin coming up, for our church bulletin, I talked about when I'm kind of overwhelmed with the negativity and the stress and just things that just in general, just stress in general, then I like to listen to music. I will put on the particular music that I love, and I just kind of, I try to do the best I can to forget about this negativity stuff, because it's really difficult and it's really hard. It's when you go through life, and it's difficult. When you're happy, I've learned that when you're happy, you enjoy the music, but when you're sad, you understand the lyrics. And that's something that I've learned, especially in life. But so anyway, there's always help. Gets the help, and please get the help. So moderators, on TikTok, do we need to just let me know if we need to put sub chat only on, because we're not going to deal with trolls. We don't deal with trolls here. Oh, hello there, Arlen, Mike, and Linda. Appreciate that. So we don't deal with trolls here. We just completely ignore you and we move on. So, okay, good. So just let me know. All right. Well, let's talk about this, because the Aokigahara, that's what we're going to be talking about, forest. An alarming number of Japanese citizens have taken a very dark pilgrimage to the Aokigahara Forest. It's more commonly known as Japan's unaliving forest. And actually, it's world renowned. to obviously to end everything, and most commonly by they use trees, obviously, and followed by taking some medications. And an untold number have wandered in and have never wandered out. It is an unbelievable. If you don't know about this, thank you, Judy Ann posted the actual name. If you don't know anything about this, I would encourage you to check it out and to learn about this, because it's pretty intense. And matter of fact, they've made movies off this particular forest. So I just put it in the chat room. That way you guys can see it as well. So let me give you a little bit of a history about this and tell you some of the things that's happened, because boy, I tell you guys, this place is it is a crazy location. Beginning in the 1960s, between approximately 10 and 30 people each year spent their last living moments in the forest at the base of Mount Fuji. And the number of annual unalivings has greatly increased recently. See, they had in 2003, there were 105 individuals were discovered there who had unalived themselves. And comprehensive data on lives lost in the forest doesn't seem to have been released since 2003. That's not a good sign. So the question is, why here? Why at the Aokigahara Forest? Why? Well, why is a small patch of serene forest the second most popular unaliving destination in the world? Thought to trail. By the way, you know what the first one is? This might surprise you. This is the second most popular unaliving destination place in the world. Thank you, Andy. The first, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. So how common is unaliving in suicide? Well, in Japan. All right. So we know that a lot of people have taken their lives in this particular forest. But what about Japan in general? Well, we're going to give this a little unaliving context to the land of the rising sun. As recently as 2017, Japan's unaliving rate was the sixth highest in the world and the second worst among 8 major industrialized nations. So the number of unaliving in Japan was 21,897 in 2016, which was the lowest total in 20 years. But unaliving was still the leading cause of death among people in ages 15 to 39 age groups there. So why are Japanese unaliving rates so high? Well, for starters, let's look at this. Unaliving is viewed differently in Japan than it is in the United States. Yoshinori Chao, the director of the psychiatry department in Tokyo, or Tikiyo, the University of Kawasaki, explains how while in America, unaliving is almost always culturally viewed as shameful, cowardly, or a selfish act. And it can be seen as an honorable way out, however, in Japan's ideology, thanks to the Japan's samurai tradition. So we have to explain a little bit about this. I know people want to get into the scary ghosts and goblins and all this stuff, but we try to elevate the show a bit more than just ghosts and goblins. Let's talk about the seppuku. So the seppuku, or called harakiri in the Western world, is the ancient samurai act of ceremonial unaliving. It's actually first recorded in 1180. So they lived by a very strict code that was much based on the old hardcore phrase, death before dishonor. So the samurai culture developed in the 12th and 13th centuries, distinct from the culture of the rest of the imperial Japan. So they became these group of warrior monks, kind of in a way. And in the samurai, they were bound by the code of the Bushido, which is to unalive themselves rather than bring dishonor to themselves or their families or the community. So if captured by the enemy, if that was imminent, they would commit seppuku, unalive, rather than be taken. And if their daima was killed, they would again commit seppuku. So if they had brought dishonor on themselves in a number of ways done something unforgivable by the code, then they would also commit seppuku. So again, seppuku is the Japanese version of unaliving. So hopefully you're understanding the terminology. So in 1945, after their defeat in World War II, many Japanese military officials and civilians committed a voluntary seppuku out of a resolute sense of pride and honor that refused to bend to the enemy. And here's how the ritual would go if the time allowed and their enemy wasn't kicking in the doors about to capture you. So prior to the event, the samurai would write a death poem because it was felt that the person facing imminent death was believed to have special insight into the nature of death and the value of life. Culture is beautiful. And this is why when I was at Loyola University, we studied culture relativism. We studied culture period, from different perspectives. And when you really get into the culture and you understand deep traditional culture, it's quite amazing. So what happened, they would have this poem or this letter, and they would have this special insight into the nature of death and the value of life because they were in the cups. They were right there at the ledge. So then a large white cushion would be placed and witnesses would arrange themselves discreetly to one side. So the samurai, wearing a white kimono, would kneel on the pillow in a formal style, and behind and to the left of the samurai knelt his assistant. So a servant would place a wooden table before the samurai, which would contain wine, cup, a sheaf of washi, which is or paper handmade from mulberry bark, and writing utensils, as well as the kozuko, which is a disemboweling blade. So although the samurai would be allowed to use his own sword if he preferred. So before committing seppuku, a samurai would write it's called a death poem. That was considered important as a person facing imminent death was believed to have special insight into the nature of death and the value of life. So the poem should be graceful and natural, and usually in the theme of transient emotions. Even mentioning the samurai's impending death in the poem would be considered poor form and uncouth. So this was also important for the samurai, as the poem would serve as a written glimpse into his nobility of character and how he wished to be remembered after his death. So according to Japan tradition, the samurai tradition, when he felt ready, the samurai would then loosen the folds of his kimono, exposing his stomach, and he would then lift the knife with one hand and unsheath it with the other, and setting the sheath to the one side. And after mentally preparing himself, he would obviously put the knife into the left side of his stomach and then draw it right to the right. And he would turn the blade in his wound and bring it upward. So most samurai did not have to endure this last agony, as the assistant would then continue. Well, we're not going to. As soon as there was pain, or you get what I'm saying. So why the stomach? And hopefully you're enjoying. I love history. So this is when I read this and investigated, I just loved it. The history. So why the stomach? I thought that was interesting. So as the human spirit was believed to reside in the stomach, so removing or opening the stomach was considered to be the most straightforward and bravest way to pass. So therefore, this act was a privilege reserved for the samurai. Commoners were allowed to hang or drown themselves, and samurai women, called ona bugesha, would slit their throats, but only a samurai was allowed to commit seppuku. Only a samurai. So anyway, the real samurai tried to keep their composure, even on the brink of death, and they showed their strength and full control of his mind and body in the last moments. So any previous reputation of a samurai would be meaningless if he were to pass away in an unseemly manner. So, of course, there were circumstances where there was not enough time for the samurai to undergo the whole ritual of seppuku. So therefore, acts such as the throat, or throwing himself from a running horse with a sword in his mouth, or throwing himself off cliffs, were also allowed. Okay. So kamikazes. And again, this is why I need to explain this, because when you understand the culture, then you understand why the forest, Aokigahara Forest, is one of the most, the number one place to go for in Japan, unaliving yourself. So the kamikazes, they were a group of young Japanese pilots who flew unaliving missions aimed at taking out as many enemies as possible. And they would literally crash their planes, never ejecting themselves in an attempt at survival into the enemies. So like they did, by the way, in Pearl Harbor. About 3,800 kamikaze pilots died during the war, and more than 7,000 Navy personnel were killed by kamikaze attacks. So while many other countries label kamikaze pilots insane fanatics, the Japanese actually viewed them as determined heroes who sacrificed all for the security of their family and fellow citizens. They were voluntarily ending their lives with honor. And this wasn't that long ago, by the way. This was in the 1940s. And this again reveals a very different perception regarding unaliving that we typically have in the United States. So the Japanese word kamikaze is usually translated as divine wind. And they actually train to unalive themselves in battle. But I wondered, what did they believe awaited them on the other side? Well, the predominant religion historically in Japan is Shintoism. It's the world's 5th largest religion. It's a religion of ritual and tradition. See, one of the core beliefs of the Shinto religion is the idea that everything possesses a spiritual essence or energy called kami. So mountains and rivers and places, animals and people are said to have kami inside. So Shinto beliefs about death and the afterlife are often considered dark and negative. The old tradition described death as a dark underground realm with a river separating the living from the dead. And the images are very similar to Greek mythology and the concept of Hades, and to Norse mythology, and to the concept of even hell. So Shinto traditions lean heavily on the concepts of the presence of kami and not reincarnation. So the spiritual energy or kami in everyone is released and recycled at the time of death. The spirits live in another world. So the most sacred of which is called the other world of heaven. And these other worlds are not just seen as a paradise or a punishment. Instead, the worlds are simply where their spirits reside. They can connect, visit the present world, where when people correctly perform rituals and festivals. These people believe that the ancestral spirits will protect their descendants. So like prayers and rituals performed by the living honor, by honoring the dead and memorializing them. So in return, the spirits of the deceased offer protection and even encouragement for the living. And Shintoism also views that some individuals live such an exemplary life that when they pass away, a noble's warrior death, and you make it to the VIP section, basically, thank you, of the afterlife. Hang tight with the question, because I do a presentation, and then I try to jump into the questions at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. Eastern. An article in Psychology Today it is titled Asian Honor and Unaliving, the Difference Between East and West. It's a brilliant article, by the way, from 2014. It talks about how in the West, given Christianity's view, unaliving has long been shrouded in shame, is actually viewed as one of the most grievous sins that you can commit because you can't, thank you very much, Ellie, because you can't ask for forgiveness after you've committed it. But in Eastern cultures, it has been seen as a way of atonement, of restoring honor like the samurai, and a way of protecting a family's legacy from being tarnished. See, isn't that amazing how this very, very controversial topic in the United States, it's not controversial at all in some cultures, is actually seen as honorable. Thank you, Triple T. So even as recently as 2007, after a high-profile cabinet unalived himself while under investigation for financial impropriety, the governor of Tokyo called him a true samurai for preserving his honor. It's just not looked at in the same way from these cultures at all. It's one of the ultimate sins, many people believe, and shameful deeds in the United States and Christianity, whereas in the traditional Japanese faith, it erases the misdeeds and wrongs of the life lived and leads to an enlightened soul. So Japan is trying to change, by the way, this cultural attitude. So in the early months of the year, 2018, Japan announced that it was rolling out a 5-year plan aimed at increasing unaliving prevention, and their goal to cut unaliving rates by 30% over the course of that time. So now you know a little bit about Japan's historical attitude towards unaliving yourself. I think we can peek into the specifics of the Aokigahara Forest itself. Okay, so now because that's very important to understand because a lot of us think, well, that's just so terrible. They should shame on them, but you got to remember it's a different culture. It's a different culture. Now, I'm not saying it's appropriate. I'm just explaining when you understand the perspective from a cultural difference. So the Aokigahara lies at the base of Mount Fuji. And locally, by the way, it's known under the much less ominous name of Sea of Trees, or Jukai, because of the high density of trees that are green year-round. So now Mount Fuji, Japan's holy mountain and national icon, is the tallest peak in the country. It's pristine. Its snow-capped familiar shape is painted and imprinted on virtually everything you can imagine: flags, cups, shirts, posters, ancient and contemporary art. Its majestic image conjures a sense of awe that transcends time and culture. Now, while it's only 60 miles from the congested streets of Tokyo, it feels as though it's a world apart from the modern setting of the city. So Buddhists have also held that it is a powerful and spiritual place, but the Shinto are the ones who actually hold it in the highest regard. The Shinto have 8 major shrines at the base of Mount Fuji and hundreds of smaller ones throughout the area. By the way, the earliest of these dates, all the way back to 806, predating those samurai that we spoke of earlier. So climbing the mountain itself was considered an important pilgrimage, and as such required the guidance of a holy monk or priest for many generations. And women were not allowed out there until 1945, as they were believed by the Shinto to be unclean due to menstruation and childbirth. But anyway, today thousands of people climb Mount Fuji's slopes for several hours in late summer, and usually at night to see the sunrise from the astounding view at the peak. It's considered a sacred, powerful sight. And it's said that if you have a dream about it, you will have good fortune. And the Aokigahara Forest lies beneath its northwestern side. So to get to the isolated forest by train that consists of about 12 square miles of dense, beautiful forest that grew atop the hardened lava of Mount Fuji's last major eruption, which was in 864. So the lava rock, it makes up the ground, it absorbs sound well, creates a hushed environment. It's eerily quiet. And if you were to yell for help, it's unlikely that anyone would hear you. And mostly park workers and people wanting to unalive themselves, they go into this forest, and not many locals go there. So local children are often advised to avoid it because it's believed to by many there to be a haunted place full of dark forces. So the area first started being called the Unaliving Forest in 1960, when tourists visiting the area began to find corpse that had been there for quite some time while on their hunt for the gorgeous views of Mount Fuji. And within a couple decades, volunteers, police, and park rangers, and even journalists, they were regularly surveying the grounds in search of those contemplating unaliving themselves to try to talk them out of it, and also for the remains of those who had made their final decision. Now, if you decide to visit, and you can visit there, and when you get there, you'll find the forest has a small paved parking lot. Too often has one or several abandoned cars. Hundreds of cars have pulled into that lot with their owners only to eventually leave without them. And a trail leads from the lot into the forest, and there's a sign along the trail that says, "Your life is a precious gift from your parents. Please think about your parents, siblings, and children. Talk about your troubles." And it proceeds to advise you to contact the Unaliving Prevention Association. So if you decide to move forward and to press on, let's say you just want to go visit and journey into the breathtaking greenery and the cypress, the hemlock, the pine trees, you may find some of its natural inhabitants on the way. It's unlikely. There is a lot of people say there's no wildlife there, but that's not really true. There are Asian black bear bats, mice, deer, boar, fox, rabbit, squirrels, birds. They quietly share the environment. But when the sun is up in the forest, you'll hear the quiet chatter of birds, but it's deathly silent in the dark. Completely nothing. And occasional flowers and mushrooms can be found amongst the ferns and the moss-covered rocks on the forest floor. Now, tree roots and fallen limbs snake through the undergrowth, over and around rocks and small caverns. It creates a creeping sense of entanglement. You have to be very careful as well. A lot of people say if you go there, you got to understand that you stay on the path. And I'll talk about that in just a second. The first kilometer or so of hiking, it takes you closer to the mountain itself, is littered with remnants of other hikers. Despite the constant upkeep of the officials working there, the trail itself is mostly clean. This is very disheartening when you see this. If you ever see this, if you ever go on Google and you search for pictures of the Aokigahara Forest, many times you will see ribbons and ropes are left tied to trees from previous visitors who marked their way back to the trail. Small pieces of garbage, but cut credit cards, empty blister packs from pills, the occasional broken phone. They're easy to spot there. And the further, and we'll talk about the strings in a second, the further you venture into the forest, past the caves, the more pristine the forest becomes, and also the more foreboding it feels. And if you choose to ignore all suggestions and venture off the path, it can get very, very concerning because it's unbelievably easy to get lost. This is what they tell you: do not leave the path. So if you've ever seen the movie, oh gosh, there's several movies that, let me just look this up. My brain just said goodbye to me. So the Suicide Forest movies, The Forest, and also The Sea of Trees. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But they talk about don't leave the path. And the reason is you don't leave the path is because it's very disorienting because it all looks the same. And this is one of the reasons why they have strings. And we'll go into that in a minute. So and once you get lost, you're in trouble. You're in big, big trouble. So it all starts to look the same once you leave the path. So which way exactly did you come from? And given that roughly 100 bodies have been found each year, although officials have quit posting the number in hopes of quelling the phenomenon, many people think it's much higher for the last several years. The longer you wander lost through the forest, the greater your odds of encountering someone who has chosen to unalive. So for those of you just joining, we're talking about the Aokigahara Forest in Japan. Now, most of the unaliving individuals have used trees, you understand, which is nearly always fatal. The majority of the rest choose to unalive themselves by overdose. But that isn't always nearly as fatal, but there's a good chance that some of those who don't pass away right away from that, and people who may have changed their mind, end up still passing away because in their drugged and disoriented state, they can't figure out how to make it back to civilization before it's too late. So the Japanese government is well aware of the high number of unalivings in the forest. Short of just no longer letting anyone to the forest, there isn't much more that they can do to stop it. Now, if you want to see any of this forest yourself, there's quite a few documentaries online about the Aokigahara Forest. I watched a short 20-minute Vice documentary on the Suicide Forest, where a cameraman follows nature guard Zuza Hayona on a walk through some of the grounds. And Hayona is a geologist who works in the forest as an environmental protector, and he regularly goes on these unaliving patrols in search of people, and hopefully he can talk to people and say, look, there's a different way. And he's lived in the area for about 30 years. He's personally found over, I think now it's over 200 individuals who have unalive themselves. Now, Hayona claims, as many of the local rangers do, that he can likely guess who is coming for a nature hike, who is coming with indecision and doubt, and who is coming to never leave. And those who enter the forest and they are contemplating unaliving, but haven't yet made up their mind, often bring a tent. And they use a rope or a ribbon to mark their way back to the trail as they venture off to a secluded part of the woods to contemplate their fate. So this is why if you go and you go on Google and you search for this forest, you will see lots of ribbons that will be tied right there on the path, because they go out pretty far out. And if they decide, nope, I'm going to change my mind, they can at least find their way back. There are a lot of ribbons. So their informal markers are everywhere. They are everywhere, and they don't cut them. So, the park rangers and such, they don't cut them, because obviously someone could be in the forest contemplating that. So that would be the worst thing they could do. And that the occasional noose can also be found on the ground from those who've already made their decisions. As Hayona leads viewers on a walk through the forest, often off trail, he encounters an abandoned tent that appears to have been there a few days. And Hayona hopes that they're off walking and still deciding that, that they still have hope, pointing out that if, a person had been found in the tent site, they would have to clean up. So nearby, he finds a creepy stuffed doll, and it's nailed actually upside down to a tree. And the doll wears a striped suit. The face is all ripped up, and nails are actually driven through its feet and hands. It's basically been crucified in an inverted position. And Hayona says that the doll is a sign of a contempt for society, and that a curse has been driven into the tree with the nails. Short walks leads him to a wooden sign nailed to another tree, and presumably by the same person, that reads, unaliving note, I came here because nothing good ever happened in my life. Don't look for me. And their name is also listed. And further into his patrol, Hayona finds another tent in the middle of a trail, and this one has someone inside. The person is alive, and park geologist Hayona approaches and asks the man inside if everything is okay. Remember, he knows he's been doing this for a long time, and he knows people who are just hiking versus people who are contemplating, and people who are contemplating, they bring tents. And he lets him know that he's not allowed to camp there, and that he's a nature guard on unaliving patrol. The man apologizes, but he never leaves his tent. And Hayona asks him to take time to think and be positive. He tells the stranger that it was nice to meet him, and he shows him how to leave the park. But he's worried. He was very worried because the guy didn't look like a hiker, and he wasn't dressed for hiking. And shortly after this, Hayona finds a perfectly intact skeleton on the ground and shows clear disappointment and sadness. And the bones are resting inside the clothes last worn by the person who decided to unalive themselves. And the feet are still neatly tucked into their laced boots. It's pretty eerie. The shoes look new. By the way, the individual in the tent, Hayona did find the remains. So the boots in this situation, they were clean burgundy and black rubber soled hiking boots. And there's an empty water bottle near the guy's left hand. It looks like some guy laid on his back. He decided to take some sleeping pills and drank him down with a bottle of water. Fell asleep, never woke up. And his body, by the way, was not found until 2 years later. Isn't that sad? Nothing but a skeleton and some clothes. And that's what makes it strange. No, there's no flesh, just bones, and clean. I mean, new looking shoes. Just a blatant reminder of how fragile and temporary we all are. Now, the whiteness and the clear cleanliness of the bones also make it look fake somehow. It's like a Halloween shop display, but this is real. And Hayona lets the cameraman know that someone will be notified to properly take care of the body. And near the end of the film, in this documentary, Hayona comments that, quote, "You think you die alone, but that's not true." And he shows the viewers bouquets of flowers and boxed chocolates left in remembrance of another victim of unaliving. It's a short film, but the impact is very big if you've not seen it. The fact that there are so many people unaliving themselves in that forest, that it's a virtual guarantee that you will encounter something like this by merely venturing off the trail. It's a travesty. How did this forest become such a magnet for death and despair? Why this forest? Again, for those of you just joining us, it's Aokigahara Forest in Japan. So now that we know that unaliving is used differently in Japan and other cultures, and Japan is changing this. Japan is changing this perspective. We know a lot of unalivings occur in the Aokigahara Forest, but why do they occur in this particular forest? I mean, look, if you're going to unalive yourself, why take a trip out into the woods to do that? Why out of all the locations available in a country plagued by unaliving is Aokigahara Forest the location for choice for those to do that? It's an absolutely a stunning, potentially tranquil natural wonder. Well, this is the Black Sea of Trees. The answer may actually lie in a pair of books. The first being 1960s. It's called Black Sea of Trees. It's written, it's beautifully written, so you can order it off Amazon. Amazon, you can read it. You can read it if you can read Japanese, of course. It hasn't, from my knowledge, been translated into English. It's about young lovers venturing into the Aokigahara Forest to end their lives. And it's reportedly written in a romantic tone. It glorifies the protagonist's actions. In addition to the book, that may be the reason people began to do this in this forest. Another book published in 1993 may be the reason the amount of unaliving have spiked in most recent years there. It's called and it's terrible. I can't believe that they even have this book out, but it's called The Complete Unaliving Manual. But of course, unaliving, you understand the S word. And it lists all the options that you can do this, and it's terrible. And it should have never been written. And it talks about the philosophy around it, and he simply published an instructional manual. And it's a controversial book, and it should be. And sadly, there have been many books found along with bodies at the scene of these unaliving scenes, including several cases of unaliving of junior high school students with the book next to them. And the author in the book claims that he opposes the societal pressure to persevere along and live strong. And he lists the Aokigahara, the perfect place to pass. But way too many copies of these books have been found in this forest. By the way, the book had sold over 1 million copies as of 2006. And there was an article that I found where the author was interviewed and asked if he had any regrets. And he said he didn't. He said, unaliving oneself is not a crime. It's not right to criticize those who unalive themselves because we all have that freedom. And when the authorities are tightening the control and surveillance of individuals, I have to speak out even more loudly that we can choose whatever way we want to live our lives. It's terrible. So he just did it for a buck. So the question then is the book to blame? Can literature really have such a dramatic impact? The rate of unaliving within the forest did not increase significantly after the publication of both of these books. But correlation and causation cannot be confused. These unalivings may well have been committed regardless. The books just changed the location. Or did the books maybe just add an already existing supernatural paranormal explanation as to why so many pass at their own hands in this forest? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Ubaste. It's pretty amazing. Ubaste. Legend has it. This is terrible. And it's hard to put my mind around this. But legend has it that in times of hardships, families would take care of their elderly parents. And they would take their elderly or their sick or otherwise ailing family members to the forest, and they would abandon them, leaving them to pass away. It's translated, ubaste is translated as granny dumping. And it was the practice of poor citizens bringing their senile elders to the mountaintops because they can no longer afford their care. No, TikTok's still going. No, TikTok's still going. And that actually happened because there was so much, people could not afford to feed their kids and also take care of the elderly family. So they had to make a decision. It's not a matter of, okay, well, let's just everybody cut back, and we'll give everybody the fair amount of food, because there wasn't any. There was no way to separate. So you feed your kids, and you have to remove the elderly who lived with you that were dependent on you, or you feed the elderly and you don't feed your kids. I can't imagine. But this actually has this. It's called ubaste. And so it's called granny dumping. So when families were starving due to famine and drought, difficult choices had to be made to ensure the survival of some, rather than all those within the home perishing in a slow, agonizing starvation. So an elder would be chosen from the family or volunteer on their own to alleviate the hunger of others by eliminating one mouth to feed. In nearly all the stories collected about this little-known piece of Japanese history, it is nearly always a grandmother who either volunteers or is forced to be taken to the woods, to the Aokigahara Forest. Now, in various versions, a young son carries the elderly woman on his back into the forest, and she marks his way home by leaving sticks and twigs on the ground for him to follow back. So the son would then leave her in some isolated area on or near the mountain, and she would wait until her slow and eventual death came at the hands of the elements, and thus ridding the family of what they thought of a burden and ensuring the better survival of the next generation. And that's a true story. Now, according to a 2017 Business Insider article, not only was this definitely a thing, this is even more troubling. According to this article, it's making a comeback. So today, amid Japan's demographic and economic woes, a form of ubaste is happening all over again. So there are modern day granny dumping. Doesn't involve hauling seniors up the sides of mountains, but driving them to hospitals or the offices or nearby charities, and essentially giving them up for adoption. Of course, back when this happened, ubaste happened, they didn't have these social services available. A social worker, Takanori Fujita, told the Times of London, there are a lot of people who have a certain amount of income, but who still live in poverty and struggle terribly with relatives who can't look after themselves. They are reluctant to ask for help because they feel it's shameful. Well, some think an inordinate amount of granny dumping has gone at the Aokigahara Forest over the years, creating a bunch of negative spiritual energy, a vengeful attraction to those seeking an end to their troubles. So this is where the negative energy is coming in. And a lot of people say, and this is true. You could look it up. Let me give you the definition. UBASUTE, ubaste. And it's called granny dumpling. And it happened quite often, which is unfortunate to the poor. And it's shameful. But it sounds kind of crazy, but not so crazy to a lot of people in Japan. I mean, just like the act of unaliving is looked at differently in Japanese culture than it is United States and most other Western countries, the concept of ghosts is viewed differently, by the way, as well, in that it's much more acceptable culturally to believe in ghosts in Japan than it is here. For example, in 2013, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe displayed and voiced reluctance to move into his official residence because he felt a bad presence and he thought it was haunted. And he actually had, as several of his predecessors believed as well. And he wasn't mocked by his citizens. In fact, people basically thought, well, if it's haunted, then he shouldn't move or go there. Well, a lot of Japanese citizens have no problem at all believing in ghosts, and they don't think all of them are very nice. Now, this is where we're going to get into some real interesting conversations. There is a term called the yūrei, or the vengeful ghost. So spiritualists in Japan firmly believe that the forest is haunted by the yūrei. It's a vengeful spirit of the dead. And it's thought that the trees themselves have soaked in the malevolent energy produced by the countless unaliving and traumatic deaths that have transpired in the forest. So the yūrei are believed to be a particular type of ghost that has long been held as absolute real in Japanese culture. So the belief is that the yūrei come from people who have passed under duress or extreme sadness or anger, and were often the victims of murder or unaliving. And they're the most dangerous of all the ghosts in Japanese culture. And they're also believed to usually, but not always, be women, as traditional Japanese culture views women as being more emotional and therefore more capable of producing the extreme emotions required for the creation of these spirits. So the yūrei are terrifying, strong, and they're capable of immense harm. And even more interesting, they cannot be banished according to the culture or even fully exorcised. They can only be temporarily calmed. So the yūrei run on desire alone. And this could be anything from telling a loved one that they miss them to a desire to burn the whole world down. And whatever they want, usually related to some sort of vengeance, they will fiercely seek it. So thankfully, they are believed to commonly be tied to like a specific object or place, which allows people to generally avoid them. And a lot of Japanese spiritualists believe that the unaliving forest, the Aokigahara Forest, is basically a forest full of these objects. And if you've ever seen any Japanese or a Japanese-inspired film, you know what these ghosts look like, the yūrei. The yūrei are pale women, usually dressed in a simple white dress of sorts. They have long hair, dark hair, often covering their faces and obscuring their identity. And they move oddly and erratically. By the way, the movie, The Grudge, that's a yūrei. They have no ties to the physical realm and can bend whatever laws they choose, which give them the ability to move with terrifying speed, to defy gravity, and to like crawl along the ceiling. And they have the ability to change shape. That The Grudge is actually based on a yūrei. They can alter the living's vision in a moment's time as well, creating hallucinations, disorienting you for their own purpose. That's why in the movie I was talking about, if you've not seen it, called The Forest, there's a particular scene in the movie, which I'm not going to tell you, that it was bending or she was causing hallucinations. And they're basically those creepy monster kids, from The Grudge and from The Ring. And so those horror movies originally made in Japan and then remade into the American movies. So can they be stopped? If you go to the Aokigahara Forest, what happens? Can they be stopped if you encounter one? Well, ofunda, it's a Shinto prayer sheets, can be placed on an entrance to block or to attempt to block yūrei from entering. Otherwise, your best odds are to find a way to fulfill the desire of the yūrei or to just simply avoid them. So, maybe don't go on the nature hike to the Aokigahara Forest at all. Any property that has been the site, has been on the site of an unnatural death, like unaliving or murder or neglect, can be recorded as such. And the types of residents are also referred to as incident houses. And that makes that property ridiculously hard to sell or to rent in Japan. Realtors actually lower the prices considerably, usually 30% or more, up to half, for individuals who have been murdered at a particular home. And realtors will perform cleansing rituals to appease, calm, and even remove residual negative energy. So then why do so many Japanese and others want to unalive themselves? So maybe people are unaliving themselves in this forest because of the popularity of a few books, either directly advocating to do this, or perhaps movies, Maybe it has something to do with evil spirits, or maybe of all the tragic deaths compounded by more and more tragic deaths over the year really have created a negative attraction, some type of pulling force, if you will. Perhaps the yūrei are real, and their terrifying presence and astounding power corrupts the minds of visitors. Maybe these evil sirens call out to the brokenhearted. And maybe all of this is happening in Japan because Japan has a high rate of unaliving in general. And Japan has a high rate, at least partially because the act of that is not as taboo in Japan as it is in other countries. So why are modern Japanese unaliving themselves? I get that it's we talked about the cultural acceptance, the historical cultural acceptance in the samurais and the kamikazes. I get that this forest has been turned through a combination of literature and lore into a final destination of sorts for the hopeless. But still, you need a reason to want to unalive yourself. So motive, what is it? Well, partly it could be a terrible combination of financial pressure and lax insurance policies when it comes to paying out on unaliving. Ken Joseph, who works at the Japanese unaliving hotline, thinks this is part of what's going on. See, he says that elderly people who are in financial trouble may see unaliving as a way out of their problems. And it's different than in America. The insurance system in Japan is very lax when it comes to paying out for unaliving. So when all else fails, some people feel that you can just unalive yourself and the insurance will pay out. In the United States, it will not. And there's sometimes an intolerable pressure on the elderly that the most loving thing they can do is to unalive themselves and thereby provide for their family. Can you imagine? And because of this, some experts think that Japan's unaliving rate is actually much higher than what's being reported. And a lot of lone deaths of elderly people are never fully investigated by the police. And according to Ken Joseph, the almost universal practice of cremating bodies here also means that any evidence that's quickly destroyed. There's also a lot of pressure for the young men in financial pressure. That may explain the elderly, but the fastest growing unaliving demographic in Japan is young men. And it's now the single biggest killer of men okay, I got to do this puzzle 1 second so we can continue on TikTok. There we go. So it is now the single biggest killer of men in Japan, aged 20 through 44. That's terrible. And the evidence suggests that these young people are unaliving themselves because they have lost hope. They're incapable of seeking help. And the numbers first began to rise after the Asian financial crisis of 1998. And they climb again after the 2008 worldwide financial crisis. And experts think those rises are directly linked to the increase in precarious employment. So Japan was, by the way, Japan was once known as the land of lifetime employment. But while many other older people still enjoy job security and generous benefits, nearly 40% of young people in Japan are unable to find stable jobs. And by the way, there is a dramatic increase of unaliving of young people between 20 and 44 in the Aokigahara Forest. Now, the hikikomori, the financial anxiety and insecurity are also compounded by Japan's culture of not complaining. It is the cultural belief of the hikikomori. Do the best they can with these Japanese pronunciations. So a lot of, how do you pronounce this word? How do you pronounce this word? A lot of notes here. So the hikikomori is this Japan's belief of don't complain. And there's a quote here. It says, there are not many ways to express anger or frustration in Japan. It says Mr. Nishida, sorry, it's a psychologist at Tokyo's Temple University. He said, quote, there is a rule-oriented society. Young people are molded to fit into a very small box. They have no way to express their true feelings. And if they feel under pressure from their boss and get depressed, some feel the only way out is to unalive. And technology may be making things worse, he says, increasing young people's isolation. Japan is famous for a condition called hikikomori. It's a type of acute social withdrawal. And the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare defines hikikomori as people who refuse to leave their house, isolate themselves from society in their homes for a period of exceeding of 6 months. And by the way, according to government figures released in 2010, there are 700,000 individuals living as hikikomori with an average age of 31. Now, the young person affected may completely shut themselves off. And it's often a male, and all from the outside world, withdrawing into a room or going to the Aokigahara Forest. And that's just the most extreme version of a more common problem in Japan. And Japan's mental health care system, it's a mess. There's an acute shortage of psychiatrists. There's also a no tradition of psychiatrists working together with clinical psychologists. So people suffering from mental illness may be prescribed powerful psychotropic medicines, but unlike in the West, this will often not be accompanied by a recommendation that the patient seek counseling. So the counseling industry itself is a free-for-all. Unlike in America or Europe, there is no government-mandated system of training and qualifying clinical psychologists. So anybody can set himself up as a counselor, and it's very hard for someone seeking help to know whether they actually know what they're doing. It's not a happy picture. And while the unaliving rate has actually begun to decline in the last 3 years, it's still very high. So Nishida says Japan needs to start talking about mental illness much more, and not just as something scary or strange that afflicts a few. And when he says when you see a television discussion on mental illness in Japan, they still talk as if depression equals unaliving, he says. He said that needs to change. So when you think about this presentation, first, it is believed that now the rate is over 200 people that they at least have published. Believe that over 200 people choose to unalive themselves in Japan's forest, the Aokigahara Forest, every year. And some people say it's much higher. A combination of two popular books glamorizing taking one's life in the Aokigahara Forest, combined with the tradition of unaliving being viewed as an honorable act, could count for many of these unalivings. Financial pressure, revival of self-imposed granny dumping, modern social isolation, and a lack of proper mental health resources could be combining to keep these rates high in Japan. And really hope that the yūrei are not real. And that there are no evil, creepy, dark-haired kid monsters like that from The Ring and The Grudge and other Japanese horror movies luring people into some kind of haunted forest, real or not. A lot of people go there. And I think the biggest takeaway here is the most recent controversy involving the unaliving forest. It's a little bit of old news at this point, but it's still worth mentioning. For those of you who don't know, his name was Logan Paul, or Paul Logan. He was a very famous YouTuber, and now I think he's a WWE superstar. And he had over 20 million subscribers on YouTube. He was extremely popular from what I understand, being obnoxious. And his popularity literally just makes me sad because I find the content to be so concerning. But anyway, Logan thought it would be funny. As an extremely successful and wealthy, happy person, as he was, because he was making a substantial amount of money on YouTube, he decided to film a video of someone who had just unalived themselves, someone who was probably sad, impoverished, conventionally unsuccessful, because, well, obviously, he unalived themselves. So what Logan decided to do is he took a trip, and he went to Japan's suicide forest to film a video for his vlog. And he went knowing that there were high odds that he would actually encounter a body or an active unaliving attempt. And not surprisingly, that's exactly what happened. And he's wearing that stupid little kid type alien hat that pulls down over the dumb. Anyway, intentionally wacky and over the top, doesn't take it off when he actually sees the body, which to me reads it's very disrespectful. And then he laughs about the whole situation, standing just a few feet away from the individual who was still hanging. Can you imagine? It's basically what Logan did. And he got called out online for it, by the way. And Logan took 3 weeks off and supposedly spent some time reflecting on learning about depression and the complexities of unaliving. And then, to his credit, selfish motives or not, he pledged $1 million to the Unaliving Prevention Organization, and he made another video, and he's, apologized. But it was disgusting. It was disgusting what he did. Anyone could look. Here's the deal with the Aokigahara Forest. Anyone could easily get lost in that dense forest. As GPS encompasses, they don't usually work under its cover due to the high iron deposits in the top soil. And this reason makes people enter the forest with tape and string them along as they walk through the forest in order not to get lost. However, one woman stated that someone cut her tape intentionally, leaving her lost in this forest. Though she made it out, the question here is, who would cut her tape? And several people often hear chilling and abnormal screams while strolling in the Aokigahara Forest, believing it to be manifested by yūrei. So there have been paranormal investigators, quite a few actually, who've gone to this forest and they've captured what appears to clearly is a scream. And it's very, very dangerous. You have to be very careful. And this is why, again, you do not go off the beaten path, because the pathway off the path, it's dangerous. I mean, you can easily break an ankle because it's not as smooth. I mean, it's built obviously by lava. So if you hear this horrible scream or you see a full body manifestation before you and you run and you take off, or God forbid it's late at night and someone had just unalived themselves and you see this and you run, you could easily break a leg. You could fall, you could do some serious damage and you could be in trouble. And this is why they always say, stay on the path. And there's been many people who have heard these blood curdling screams in the forest. And upon further research for the cause of the noise, he discovered there was a person who actually was there. Japan Times writer, he actually shared his experience in this forest, stating that when he was there at night, he heard this horrible blood-curdling scream. And then upon further research for the cause of the noise, he discovered a corpse of a man at the center of a tree. But here's what's really eerie about it. After a quick examination, it was revealed that the body was deceased for quite some time and couldn't be the reason for those blood-chilling screams. However, the yūrei could be. So he actually found where this blood-curdling scream was coming from, and he went to it, and what he found was the remains of someone who had unalived themselves. That would have been what the Japanese would say that was a yūrei. Another one of the trademarks of the unaliving forest is the ghost sightings. So numerous visitors have claimed to have seen various apparitions floating amid the trees. Just because the forest is known as the notorious unaliving attempts by the people, it doesn't simply imply that everyone who passes meets their ending. It's deemed that only those who would die, who the yūrei of the Aokigahara once dead. So many who went into the forest in order to end their life came out alive from the forest because the yūrei didn't want them. Hideo Watanabe, it's a shop owner, was interviewed by the Japan Times, and he told that he has seen various people come out of the woods after endeavoring to unalive themselves. However, they failed. They chose not to do it. One of the survivors had a rope around her neck, and her eyes were going out of the sockets. And he took her inside, offered them some tea to drink, and afterward called an ambulance and took her to a hospital. And a tourist couple once decides to wander the forest. However, soon they started having a sense of suffocation. As they were trying to get out of the forest, it seemed that the trees took the form of a living being and tried to enclose them. And at last, they made it out of the forest with the help of the tape that led them back out of them. Another mysterious fact about this place is once a couple was meandering the forest, they got lost. However, shown the way out of the forest by a Buddhist monk. And when they returned, they told the local about their encounter with the monk. They came to know that many believe that there is a monk living in the forest that deter people from ending their lives. Although nobody's ever seen this Buddhist monk outside the forest, some say it is a pious spirit that prevents people from unaliving themselves. Since the Aokigahara Forest bodies several corpses, Japan's government passed an act of action that focuses on it to lessen the rates of these, hopefully. And some of the measures comprise posting security cameras at the entry of the forest, and there were signs posted on several roads as well. In 1960, a novelist wrote a tragic novel called the Kiro Jukai. It's a book about a heartbroken girl that ran away towards the woods to unalive herself. The romantic story has proven to be very influential. Another book we talked about about how ways to do it, which was stupid, and that's unfortunately, as I talked about Logan Paul, and that was a terrible controversy. And if you get lost in this forest while exploring, you might encounter something horrifying. Sometimes you'll find discarded personal belongings, captured bushes to human bones, and more gruesome remains scattered throughout the forest. So even after all this information, your adventurous soul screams for something thrilling by venturing into the forest. Try doing that by abiding by the signs and posting on the path. I mean, really, your life matters. So I would encourage you, if you ever go there, just stay on the forest. Don't do anything else. Stay there. And it's really sad. Japan has had one of the highest unaliving rates in the world. And that's really, really sad. But and it really is, it's naturally eerie too. So for the bad reputation aside, there's no place for a leisurely stroll except for on the path. The forest trees organically twist and turn, and their roots winding across the forest floor. It's treacherous. And because of its location at the base of a mountain, the ground is very uneven and rocky, and a lot of caves as well. And more jarring than its tricky terrains is the feeling of isolation created from the stillness. The trees are too tightly packed for winds to whip through, and wildlife is sparse. And one visitor described the silence as a chasm of emptiness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of hangings, and it's sad. It is very, very sad. So now that you have, hopefully that, I can't believe, the granny dumping. That is truly sad. That is I can't imagine. But it did happen, and that's a pretty sad thing if you think about it. So, by the way, camping is allowed in the area, but visitors who bring a tent with them are believed to be undecided, as I mentioned, and some will camp for days. And so there are prevention patrols that go out and try to help and say, hey, look, maybe think about this and consider it. Consider there's better options out there. And there's a lot of things that you can discover that maybe you don't necessarily want to. But anyway, so hopefully you've enjoyed the. I know it's a heavy presentation, but I wanted to present the most thorough presentation that I could within an hour or so of the Aokigahara Forest. It is certainly a place that I would like to visit one day, out of respect for those who have passed, and offering a prayer. But there is wildlife. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. There is wildlife, but there's not a whole lot. And actually, during the day you can hear the birds, but at night, totally silent. There's nothing at all. You hear nothing at all at night. So. Well, I don't think I'll be going anytime soon, unless I win that lottery. So, yeah. Well, it's because it's based on a mountain. We actually talked about that earlier, about GPSs don't work very well. and there's a lot of theories as to why. So if you're out there and you have GPS, it's not going to help you, and so but because it again, it's based on the iron and the mountain. And apparently, there's a lot of interference. But yeah, there's been a lot of people. There is no, it's not. It's not a common thing, you know. But there's been a lot of people who have gone to this forest. Well, yeah, that's why I talked about the yureis. I talked about I don't know if you just joined us. So, do I believe in dancing? I do believe in dancing, but I don't dance because I'd probably break my legs and my hips. I don't. No, 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 no. Oh, you have a lot of people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. Yeah, I would encourage you if you're interested in learning more about this. The yūrei, pretty nasty. By the way, the movies. Well, there's a lot of people that Anna that absolutely believe that the yūrei is there, and if you were to tell them that they're not, they would look at you like you're absolutely insane. So, for those of you who don't know, this is a movie called The Forest. Let me kind of give you a synopsis. If you have not seen it, it's actually a really interesting movie, and it's 2016. I want to find it a better explaining. So let me just, there it is. Yeah, this is okay. The forest has yūrei. That's basically what happens in this film. This is by Alex on Film, 2016. It's called The Forest. The Forest is a horror movie set in Japan's infamous unaliving forest, the Aokigahara Forest, at the base of Mount Fuji, where people often go to unalive themselves. She said, "I thought it looked like Oregon." The forest you see in the screen was in fact in Siberia. By the way, the movie, the forest was not filmed in the Aokigahara. So just give you a heads up on that. But basically, there's a girl, there's a twin, and she goes searching for her twin. And her twin was in Japan. It suffered from, some depression. So it's a young woman's desperate search for her twin sister brings her to a ghost-filled stretch of wilderness, and at the Aokigahara. And so it's pretty interesting. It's not a bad movie. It's not a terrible movie. But if you have not seen it, and if you're interested, it's called The Forest, 2016. Also, The Sea of Trees. The Sea of Trees. This is really interesting because The Sea of Trees, it kind of talks about, I talked about earlier, I just gave an hour-long presentation, a little over an hour. It refers to that monk that's supposedly there inside of the Aokigahara Forest that kind of helps people find their way back to the path if they're lost. It's very similar to that. It's a serious film, and it's Matthew McConaughey stars in this. It's called The Sea of Trees, 2015 American drama mystery film. The film is about an American man who tries to unalive himself in the Aokigahara. It's an infamous suicide, unaliving hotspot in Japan, where he meets a Japanese man who was there for the same reason. And let's see. Principal photography began in 2014 in Massachusetts. The production moved to Japan in September of the same year. It was selected to compete in the Cannes film, and it received negative reviews from critics and was a box office bomb. Oh boy, that's not good at all. It grossed $825,000 with a budget of $25 million. Wow. It is a slow movie. I would not say it's it's different than the other movie. So let's just say that The Forest is more of a horror movie, whereas The Sea of Trees, it's more of an emotional drama. Yeah, that it's called The Forest 2016. That's more of a horror movie, kind of a feel to it. But it's not so over the top horror, because remember, you got to remember the yūrei. So the yūrei are these evil spirits that causes you to hallucinate. And that's very important to remember while you're watching this movie. So I just, I don't know where you can watch it. You can just type in where can I watch? I don't know where it's being aired right now. So, but anyway, it's called The Forest 2016 and Sea of Trees. And there you go. So you might want to check it out if you want to. If you don't, that's okay too. All right. So let me just talk briefly about a couple. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try to entertain them to the best of my ability. Yeah, I've never been to Japan. Is there anything in life that scares me? Yes, the hate that's online. That scares me. Because the amount of hate that is online is just, it is truly concerning to me. It's concerning that people think that it's okay to be so unbelievably hateful and cruel. And they think that that's okay. That's I've never seen it as bad. No, not the demons. The demons, when the parlor tricks, you understand the parlor tricks of the demons. You understand the nature of a demonic. That's one thing. But for people to actually enjoy trolling others and making fun of people and breaking them down, that frightens me. Because I don't understand that type of mentality. But that's terrifying to me. I mean, there was a little baby, for goodness sakes, there was a little baby. She was born with a birthmark on her forehead, and people, and her parents, was talking about it online on social media, and people actually went online and said some of the nastiest, most vulgar things about this little baby who happened to have a massive birthmark on her forehead. I just, and people thought it was funny. That just, I don't know. Well, Ruth, because that's a question. When you talk about sin is knowing an act as evil and still freely committing that act. I certainly can, but so can you, Marie. By the way, for those of you who like a paranormal conference, I talked about this the other day. And if you just join us, now I do have an online class that you can take. They are, just go to bishopjameslong.com, click on the class link. And so I have made all the classes free. And they were only $49.99 for all four. So it's like $12.50 a class. I roll my eyes because trolls, they were thinking that I was making so much money. I had 1 to 2 people that were enrolling a month. Anyway, so they're free. And if you want to take the class, you can. Please consider donating. But don't go to bishopjameslong.com and scroll down and donate. Make sure you go to the class link. And there you'll see bishopjameslong.com. Click on the class link, and you'll see. If you'd like to donate, please donate there, because all the funds goes to Father Tommy Golden, and he is responsible for all that and nothing. So I'm donating everything to the church. So it says here, how to sign up for the class. Please make your donations at the link below. And if you, donations to enroll in the online course, click it. And then you just click the request, enrollment, and just do it. Just take the classes. Simple as that. Well, first of all, Marie, you call upon God. And there's, of course, the St. Michael the Archangel prayer that you can pray. I don't know if you're Catholic. If you're Catholic, you can certainly pray the rosary. But I certainly wouldn't be intimidated by demons. Can you come in and ask a question about possession, please? No hate or anything. Well, Stan, unfortunately, I have the show running on multiple computers. So I also have the show on Spreaker, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on KGRADB radio. So if I bring you on, they won't be able to hear you because I can't connect those programs to TikTok. So I'm running TikTok on a separate computer. For those of you who are interested in paranormal conventions, in Connecticut's original paranormal convention, July 20th through the 21st. So July 20th to the 21st, if you're interested. In Stratford, Connecticut, Paracon, Connecticut's original paranormal convention will be returning to the state. but in a brand new location on Saturday and Sunday, July 20th to the 21st. The paranormal season begins with the Spooky Spectacular at the Baldwin Center in Stratford, Connecticut. The Haunted Weekend event will feature special guests, seminars, panel speakers, vendors, exhibits, film festivals, and much more. It's open to all ages, and so you can go there. There's several people already mentioned. It'll be neat. I have never been there. So Paranormal Convention reveals again July 20th through the 21st at Paracon 4 is what it's named, Paracon 4. If you're interested in the area, or if you're in the area, there you go. Yeah, we don't talk politics, guys, in here. Today is strictly Paranormal Fridays. People wait all week long to participate, and so we're not interested. I won't talk politics. It's not my platform is not that type of platform. I know there's a lot of platforms out there where people like to scream and yell and holler and call each other names. That's not what we do here. Sundays and Wednesdays, for those of you who want to know, for Sundays and Wednesdays, we have Bible study at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so we'd love for you to join us Sundays and Wednesdays. And of course, we also have night prayer every Monday through Friday. Every Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so there we go. So just in case you need to know. Yeah, send me a message there on Facebook. That's the best way. I have over 14,000 messages on TikTok, so it's just too hard to keep up. Okay, listen to this. This is interesting. I want to share this with you guys. Explain paranormal platform. What do you mean? Explain paranormal platform. I don't know. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are paranormal. I would do a Google search for a paranormal conference in Iowa. That's right, Pumpkin Eater. That is very, very true. You've written that several times. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's very, very true. And so that's why we don't judge people, because if we're judging people, then in fact, that's doing exactly what Christ said not to do. So yeah, I agree. Okay. This is by People Magazine, by the way. So if you guys want to know. When will you be doing the gates? I actually did some filming already for the gates. I just have to put it together. It just, I'm very, very busy. So I don't have a team to do it. It's me, and I have to kind of put it all together. And so I'll do the best I can. Okay, this is by Eric Clack. Eric Clack. Paranormal experiences with ghosts of dogs could help pet owners deal with their grief, a new study suggests. Chupacabras is interesting. They're really interesting, aren't they, Libre? There's a lot of people who really believe in the chupacabra. Oh, that's right. Yes, October 26th and 27th. By the way, I will be at the Arkansas Paranormal Expo. So I will be there. I'll give a presentation. So if you would like to join us, we'd love to have you. And it's for a great organization too. It's a fundraising event. So let me just. It is for a fundraising event. The Arkansas Paranormal Expo is a benefit supporting the MacArthur Museum of Arkansas Military History. The tower building, which was built in 1840, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's the birthplace of General Douglas MacArthur. And so the whole point of this expo is to raise funds to help preserve the beautiful historic building. Pretty cool. So if you want to go there, just type in ArkansasParanormalExpo.com. ArkansasParanormalExpo.com. And it's in Little Rock, Arkansas. All the information is there for you. And I'll be there, of course, on Saturday and Sunday, and I'll be doing a presentation as well. So if you want to come out, that would be great. We'd love to have you. But listen to this. I'm curious about what you guys think about this. This is by Eric Clack. Eric Clack. There is something different going on with the grieving process of a dog for dog guardians that makes supernatural encounters operate differently than they do in the more typical human mourning. That's wrote study author Jennifer Goldbeck. Paranormal encounters with deceased pets may help some animal owners cope with their grief, according to a new study. Jennifer Goldbeck, a computer science professor at the University of Maryland, recently conducted the first systematic study of the supernatural experiences of bereaved animal owners. The goal was to examine the range of perceived encounters with deceased canine companions and their meaning and significance to the pet owners. Wow. Goldbeck conducted the study using social media, posting a prompt on both X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram that asked, if you have lost a dog, have you had an experience like seeing their ghost, receiving a sign? Did they communicate with you? She received, by the way, 544 responses and organized them according to 2 major themes with 6 sub-themes. Physical experiences like hearing, seeing, and touching the ghost of a dog. Thank you. And interpreted experiences like seeing signs in nature, receiving visits from the deceased dogs in dreams. The most common sensory experience, 37% of the responses, involved hearing the dog, such as a bark or the sound of claws, like the clicking on the floor. And nearly half, 44.4%, of the physical experiences occurred at night, with people reporting 45 of the cases that they felt their dog lying in bed next to them. That I have felt. The most commonly cited interpreted experience, including visitations in dreams, 15%, and ghostly activity, 15%, and such as objects moving or a living pet acting a certain way in the spirit of a deceased pet. Now, Goldbeck looked at how respondents described their feelings associated with their supernatural experiences and found that the majority of people, 75%, reported feelings that were positive, bringing a sense of comfort, reassurance, and protection, or even a gift. And the finding was noteworthy, she wrote in the study, because psychology largely characterizes externalized continuing bonds, particularly seeing ghosts, as negative. Or overwhelmingly, respondents consider the supernatural experiences comforting rather than distressing. Well, I would say so. I'm curious, how many of you have experienced that? How many of you, well, thank you very much. How many of you experienced? There's a lot of people. I have absolutely 1,000,000%. A lot of people have. Wow. Wow, that's really interesting. So there's a lot of. I do. Yeah. I'm familiar with the situation. I don't agree with that many of the things that he teaches, but that should have never happened to him. I've had that experience. Well, certainly when I was sitting on my couch after, I had 2 schnauzers, and Fuzzy, he was a miniature schnauzer, and Kylie, she was a toy schnauzer. I know toy schnauzer is not a thing. Okay, whatever. And she was a toy schnauzer, but Fuzzy. He was a hoot. He loved Wilma. I mean, no, Wilma was his girlfriend. But Fuzzy had this way of, before he would sit down, he would always do 3 times. 1, 2, 3, plop. And he wouldn't sit, he would just plop. And that's just that he wasn't overweight or anything. It just that was his ritual. And one time I was after he had passed, I was on the couch, I was working on something, and I felt the 1, 2, 3, and plop. And I thought, man, that is unbelievable. So I've had that experience before. And that was to me, of course, I am absolutely convinced without question, because Revelation talks about animals being in heaven. I am convinced without question, no doubt about it, that our fur babies are in heaven. I have no doubt. People may disagree. Fine, I don't care. They can disagree. But that's my belief, and I'm sticking to it. But yeah, that's what I absolutely felt. Miss Wilma's doing well. Miss Wilma will be here tomorrow. Well, that's fine. Again, Marie, we can disagree with each other's theology. I'm not saying, but that's why I just said I disagree with anybody attacking another person. So, yeah, Blue Moon, I do. I absolutely am convinced that animals are able to perceive things that we cannot. Absolutely. I do. I think so. I absolutely. I'm convinced. There are so many people who've experienced this, that when so many people are saying that they've experienced that type of sensation, whether they see it or hear the clicking, they're like the nails running on the floor. It's pretty powerful. So yeah. Yeah, but Fuzzy did that. He would always just 3 times before he sat down. It was a ritual. 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and just plop. And so it was pretty funny. Okay. Let me just see. Okay, let's again. I appreciate. We're talking about the paranormal tonight. I'm here every Sunday and Wednesday, so every Sunday I go live, and sometimes I talk 3 hours. And I'm very strict when it comes to Sundays and Wednesdays. We talk theology, but people have waited for an entire week for Friday for Paranormal Friday. So that's what we're doing, to be fair to everybody. Here's how I live my life. There are people that I do not agree with on their theology, and that's fine. And there are people that do not agree with me and my theology, and that's fine. No, Marie, it's not you. Please understand that I have other chats that are open. I have a chat here, I have a chat here, I have a chat here, and I have a chat here. So there's a lot of chats open right now. So just bear with me if I don't. And for those of you offering gifts on ministry, thank you, Larry. For those of you who have offered gifts on ministry, I apologize if I'm not thanked you. It's just because, again, I have so many computers running at the same time. Sometimes I don't see them. So, okay. That's for those of you who don't know this. I certainly think that the Aztec probably would be very, very haunted. And you're good. You're good, guys. It's all good. You're good. We're seriously. We're all good. We're all good. There was allegedly. I'm kind of curious about what you guys think about this. Let me see who wrote this. No one wrote it. Well, we don't have to worry about that because that doesn't tell us anything. Family lost roommate of a college graduate, unloving. Yeah, I understand that. I do understand that, and I we pray for those people who have done that, and we're not here to that we just show compassion to anyone. This is by Chris Harvey. How many of you guys think? How many of you guys think that alien life exists? I'm just curious about what your thoughts are. How many of you think alien life exists? So a lot of yes. So yes, I do. Yes, it could. There's a lot of yeses on TikTok. 100%. So far, I see very little. Very little no. Okay. So we have quite a few. We have quite a few saying yes. Oh, good. There's good. We have a poll right now on going up right now. So there's a poll. If you see this little poll, right? Well, it's right here. Well, right there. I think it's right there. There's a little poll there, and I'd be curious to see what you think about this. Oh, well, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate all you guys being here. So as soon as we have about 20 seconds left, and then we're going to talk about yeah, that's pretty cool. And remember, Sundays and Wednesdays we're here at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. We teach Bible study. I teach Bible study, and I've also been teaching about Revelation. And again, people keep asking me about this ring. For a million times, I've already said you can buy this ring on Etsy. It's $48, and I even showed where it is. So, so what was the? Oh wow, look at that! We had 50 votes. Do you think alien life exists? 82% said yes on TikTok. 8% said no. 10% said maybe. Well, looky there. Looky there. Well, listen to this. This is by Chris Harvey. The announcement. Now listen to this. The announcement, we have found alien life, could be just a couple of years away. So generally, he says, when I'm on a plane, if I tell somebody that I search for life on planets around the other stars, I don't get to sleep. Says Lisa Cat learned with a laugh. She says, it's always a careful, curated answer depending on if I need to do something next morning when I arrive or not. People are like, oh, I read about this, and have been visited. Is it true? Well, anyway, outside of her need for sleep, she loves those questions. She's a 47-year-old professor of astrophysics, is a pioneer and world expert on the search for extraterrestrial life. As the author of Alien Earths, Planet Hunting in the Cosmos, Alan Lane, Radio 4's book of the week next week, she is well aware that her chosen field of study taps into a deep and abiding human fascination. Are we alone in the universe? Now, as the director of the Carl Sagan Institute at Cornell University, in New York, which brings together scientists from many separate disciplines to collaborate on the search for life among the stars, she's better placed right now to answer those questions than most anyone on Earth. That is true. Says, when I catch up with her over Zoom at her home in New York, she just got back from a 3-week lecture tour in New Zealand, and etc. She's talking about the eclipse. She's upbeat, passionate, physically expressive. Evidence of alien life, she believes, is very close. She is looking for biosignatures, telltale signs of life in the atmospheres of distant planets, the sort of gases that organic processes create on Earth, oxygen, methane, and others. She says, we actually have a tool for finding them, she says, and a lot of people don't realize we do. She says, we have the James Webb Space Telescope, which has been up in space for about a year. She says, we live in this era of golden exploration with thousands of other worlds at our doorsteps that we can now actually explore. Alien Earths is the best tradition of pop science, bringing water worlds, planets of lava, and the possibility of blue dots like our own before our eyes in a way that's never been done or impossible. She's a natural communicator. One of the classes she teaches at Cornell is the introduction of astronomy for non-science majors. Well, that'd be a cool class to take. She said no one should run away with the idea that she is a wide-eyed believer in UFOs, alien visitors, abductions, and the rest. In fact, she begins her book by sweeping from the table all of the evidence put forward so far. She recognizes that UFO hunters are responding to the excitement of trying to find life in the universe, but a lot of times with UFO sightings, the data is just not good enough, she says. If you have a smudge on a photo, it's interesting, but... So she actually believes that... Oh, by the way, the former U.S. Air Force officer, David Grush, he's a former U.S. Air Force officer who testified at an American House of Representatives subcommittee last year that in his time on the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenal Task Force, he had seen documents that showed the existence of a secretive UFO retrieval program, that America possesses multiple spacecraft of alien origin, and that non-human, wow, that's crazy, non-human beings basically were found at an alien crash site. So this is, you can look it up, David Grush, Grusch. He testified the House of Representatives. So, I mean, obviously, if he lied, that would be it. I mean, that's a felony. You go to prison for that. So he says that we, in fact, have this task force, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenal Task Force, and that there is documentation that clearly shows the existence of a secretive UFO retrieval program, and that we have alien spacecraft and we have bodies. Well, again, so let me just say this again. Let me say it slower. Former U.S., it's not my opinion, I'm just telling you what it says. Former U.S. Air Force David Grush testified. Well, the trolls are out tonight, aren't they? So let me go slower for the trolls. They testified at an American House of Representatives subcommittee last year that he has seen documentation that shows there is, in fact, a secretive UFO retrieval program, and that America possesses multiple spacecraft of alien origin. Good grief. It's always people have always got to be so negative, always just nasty. I don't know how in the world they just possibly live with themselves. Anyway, now, oh yeah, it's pretty interesting. So yeah, you might want to look him up if you've not looked him up. It's not my opinion. He actually testified. Wasn't slow enough. He actually testified at a subcommittee, and so it is because if you lie and you're under oath, that's a felony charge. So we don't. Yeah, it's a good question, Scott. Answer. He is a firm believer that it says could it be drones on a loop from a previous civilization? Well, but I mean, we don't know. A bit or someone who once. He says they're alien aircraft. I mean, so I think he would know if he's in the Air Force. So I don't know. To compare to the Bible? What do you mean? Right. There's a lot of people who believe that there's something going on. By the way, if you like Bigfoot, I want to share this article before time runs out. Bigfoot. This is by Iris Seaton. The Bigfoot Festival returns, and why is it in Western North Carolina? Well, and you want to know about the free event. By the way, this is a free event. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Anthony. Even Obama was asked about that. Obama was asked about it. Clinton was asked about it. Trump was asked about it. Bush was asked about the alien life and things. And all of them have said there are things we cannot discuss. That's pretty interesting. For those of you who like Bigfoot, Marion's Harriest tradition is returning for the season. The Bigfoot Festival will be back on May 18th. Two things are certain about the spring in Western North Carolina. According to a news release from its festival, the weather is unpredictable, and Bigfoot comes out of hibernation just in time for the WNC Bigfoot Festival. So it's in Marion. Nonprofit Bigfoot research group Bigfoot 911 has explored the mountains of Western North Carolina and beyond for years, searching for the elusive Bigfoot. The news release said Bigfoot 911 is inspired to host the first WNC Bigfoot Festival in Marion for believers, non-believers, skeptics, and everyone in between after several close encounters with the Sasquatch. The festival's webpage states that the group has supported national nonprofits and local civic groups. That's pretty cool. Says there's something for everyone on the schedule for the 2024 Bigfoot Festival, from Sasquatch-inspired cuisine to paranormal investigation speakers to the Bigfoot calling contest. Wow. So there'll be a lot of cool things going on. So if you're let's see, Saturday, May 18th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And let's see, there's some other things going on. Marion, North Carolina, free shuttles are available from McDowell High School, McDowell Tech Community College. Boy, that's expecting quite a big people. The first annual Bigfoot Jam will be located at the Event Center, 29 Logan Street in Marion. And the Bigfoot Festival is free. But if you want to buy some Bigfoot-themed concessions, memorabilia, you can certainly do that. So Friday, May 17th, the Box Factory at the North Carolina Municipal Event Center, 29 Logan Street, 6 p.m. Doors open at 4:30. It's a Bigfoot Jam with some, and then, of course, at May 18th, that's when the festival begins and conversations. So if you want to go there, MarionBigfootFestival.com. There it is, and it's free. So yeah, you're getting free if you have big feet. So you get in free. So yeah, that's pretty neat. Bigfootfestival.com. All right, there, Mr. Producer. So if you haven't checked it out, MarionBigfootFestival.com. It's free. Let us know. Let us know if you go there. We would be very interested in hearing what you have to say. For those of you who are on Spreaker, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. It goes way too fast. I'm telling you, it goes way, way, way too. I'm going to stay on TikTok for a little bit after this, so I'll be chatting with you guys a little bit longer. Tomorrow, I'm going to be here. We will be live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will have open mic night. So open mic night is Miss Wilma and I. She's 69 years old. She's a dear friend of mine. I consider her a family member. She's in a heart failure. She has multiple sclerosis, but she loves coming on, and we just like to goof off for 30 minutes. We just have fun and tell jokes from 8 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, and then at 8:30 It's a Q&A. We just hang out, we chat. I have more articles that I want to tell you about. So at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's when we open it up to everybody. So we're here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just remember, don't forget, and this Sunday we're here at 8 p.m. Eastern as well for our Bible study. So hang tight, TikTok. I'm not leaving. Remember, my friends, I tell you all the time, your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You are priceless. And don't let the trolls or anyone else tell you otherwise. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, KGRADB Radio, and Rumble, good night. The Sacred Division has been brought to you by Bishop Long's online paranormal course. Learn demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. It's 100% online, and you learn at your own pace. Please go to www.bishopjameslong.com and click on the paranormal course link.